Hello everybody, this is Albert with the Green Tea House. I hope you're doing well today. Today we're going to go through about 5 to 10 terms that tea drinkers should know so you're not lost when we talk about tea stuff. Now before we begin, if you haven't been to New Braunfels, Texas, where we're located, please visit us at the Tea House. Green is a little tourist old area outside of New Braunfels, which is halfway between San Antonio and Austin. Come visit us if you're ever in the area. Also subscribe and hit the notification bell so these episodes come fresh to you, and post a comment. All right, so we're a good, 250, 280 episodes in, so I probably should have done this episode earlier, but I'm just going to go through some rapid fire definitions of terms that people who drink tea should know. Currently, I'm drinking a yellow tea here. I'm visiting my mother. She's 85 years old. She lives over here in Houston, so that's why I'm not filming at the tea house. But either way, let's get to it. No particular order. Tisane. A tisane is anything that you throw in hot water and drink. So typically we bifurcate and differentiate between tea and tisanes. So tea is going to be anything that comes from Camellia sinensis, the tea plant. And we have 6 families that come from it: green, white, yellow, oolong, black, and dark teas. Anything else you throw in hot water is called a tisane. So this is going to be more colloquially called herbals. So cinnamon, peppermint, licorice root, rooibos, blue butterfly pea flower, there's hundreds, burdock root, there's hundreds. Those are called tisanes. Sometimes they're called herbals, but they're not all herbs. Look at cinnamon, for example, that's a spice. Ginger is a root. So tisanes. Anything you throw in hot water. What else? Let's do a session. A session is how many times you do an infusion. What's an infusion? An infusion is when you put hot water on your leaves. That is an infusion. Okay, so an infusion is the process of putting hot water, in particular to tea, it could be cold water, but hot water onto your leaves. And the duration of that is your infusion time. So normally at the tea house, we talk about at least doing 3 infusions in a session. So a session is how many times you use those leaves before you throw them out. So if you look at Gong Fu Cha, Kung Fu style, they will commonly do very short infusions, 90 seconds, but maybe 10 times to make a session. So a session is how many times you use the leaves before you throw them out. An infusion is you putting water into your leaves. Okay, what else? Let's talk about terroir. Terroir is a common term that you hear in the wine world. Terroir, if you don't look at it from the Frenchified way it's said, it's just like a terrain, think of terrain. The terroir is going to be the atmosphere and setting for where that tea plant is being grown, and the factors that will affect how that particular Camellia sinensis cultivar is being grown. So we're going to look at what? Elevation, angle on the slope, the type of soil, the type of fertilizer, the elevation. Think of Alishan oolong. Those are a high elevation, or Darjeelings, high elevation. Whereas a lot of CTC Assamica teas are grown at low, near like equatorial regions or low to the ground, low to sea level. So terroir is just going to be the terrain, for lack of a better word. Cultivar. A cultivar is a portmanteau for cultivated variety. The best way to understand a cultivar of tea is think of it from the way it is seen in wine. So if you look at wine, a lot of wine comes from the same grapes, like a Sauvignon Blanc. But what makes those grapes different is the terroir where they're grown. So if you look at like white grapes that are grown in France, like in Burgundy, and then you look at the same white grapes that are grown in California or in Canada, they're going to be different. They're going to be a different cultivar because they're going to be affected by different factors. So even though the grapes might be the same, the teas will taste different, the wines will taste different. So when it comes to cultivars with tea, a cultivar is a particular variety of Camellia sinensis that has been set up from its saplings or from wherever it came from to grow a certain type of, not just a certain type of, let's say, green tea or a white tea, but a certain type of tea within that. So, for example, Sencha. Sencha has hundreds of cultivars. So even though Sencha is a type of green tea, within Sencha, there's going to be various types of Sencha that are going to taste different based on that plant's terroir and based on the patrimony or wherever that particular plant came from. It could be an original plant, or it could have come from a sapling that they grew the sapling and grew it. But a cultivar is a unique tea plant that is grown to make a particular tea, for lack of a better word. What else? Astringents. Astringency is more colloquially known as bitterness. So the astringence of a tea will kind of suggest that it has a negative connotation, and it's not supposed to, because there are teas, all teas on some level are going to be astringent or bitter. But we just don't want them to be too astringent or too bitter. And the greatest example of this are going to be the light categories of tea. Green, white, yellow, light oolongs. These can get overly astringent, overly bitter if you use poor tea leaves, in other words, tea bag tea, or if you steep it too hot, or if you steep it too long. So the best way to explain bitterness is when you drink it, like this yellow, I did like a 180 for 2 minutes, so very light. When you drink really bitter tea, you pucker up and you get dry mouth. So that's astringency. So as a whole, all teas will have it. We just don't want it to have too much. And so the best way to avoid that, especially on those lighter teas, is brew light and short. So low temperature and short infusions. What else? Body. The body of a tea is the fullness of the tea. So the body you're normally going to get once the tea hits your tongue. The head note is going to be the initial impression, and that's normally based on smell. The body note is going to be the fullness of the tea. So when we talk about body, you commonly hear this in wine as well. The body of tea is going to be more stronger or more robust on the higher oxidized oolongs, the blacks, and the pu'er. So the body is going to be strong, kind of like red wine. Red wines known to have a really strong body. Whereas white wines or rosés are going to have a lighter body, and the connection there would be greens, whites, yellows, and oolongs. So the body is going to be not as pronounced and as robust as you would get in the green, whites, and yellows as you would in the black. The last one I want to talk about is dark teas. So dark teas is the sixth category of tea behind green, white, yellow, oolong, and black. Many times this sixth category you'll see as being called pu'er. So pu'er is a type of dark tea. So the dark teas are black in their liquor. So I've thrown another term, but liquor. But the dark teas, there's other fermented teas. So the dark teas are fermented. Pu'er is the most famous one. So it's kind of like how we used to have photocopy machines and Xerox, or tissue paper and Kleenex, or even though the brand's not Kleenex, you're like, hand me a Kleenex. It's kind of the same thing. They're almost interchangeable. Pu'er is the most famous dark tea on the planet. There's others that are grown in China that are fermented that are not pu'er, and there's fermented tea that's grown in India and other places. Pu'er is the most famous. So a dark tea can be interchangeable essentially with pu'er, but just know that dark tea is the umbrella term for all fermented teas. The most famous and the most commonly drunk would be pu'er. And the last term is liquor. So the liquor is the color of the tea. Sometimes you might hear in Europe called the liqueur, but normally it's called the liquor. So the liquor of hibiscus is bright red. The liquor of black tea is red. Remember, the Chinese call black tea red tea because the color of the liquor is red. So the liquor is red. And that's why at Green Tea House we serve our tea in glass teapots, because we want you to look at the liquor of the tea. Guys, post in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. What are other terms that you think are important to know as a tea drinker? Until next time, take care and God bless.